Hi everybody, today I'm talking about how do you start collecting NFT comics. I think you'll find it's a lot easier than you think. Welcome back. So why and how would you start collecting NFT comics? So I'm going to break this down into a couple parts, and obviously people who are watching this video are in a lot of different phases of their collection. I know there are some people that collect physical comics and they're trying to start collecting NFT comics. I know there's people that haven't collected anything. And I know there's people that have collected NFTs, but now they're interested in the comic NFTs. So I'll try to kind of merge it all together. Definitely, if you have any questions, comment below. And I have IG. You can DM me on IG. It's SleeplynComics, or you can message me on Twitter. It's SleeplynComics. I welcome all questions. I'll do my best to answer them. Let's get started. Okay, so why would you collect comics? I'm just going to start there. I have collected comics for many years, and really, there's two parts of it. One is the story. I really enjoy reading the stories, reading about the characters, seeing what happens. Kind of like the movies, right? What's going to happen next? The second part is I think it's fun to, and this really applies to NFTs right now, it's fun to have a piece of history for a character you really, really like. So for example, if you like Black Widow or Hawkeye or Spider-Man, I'm a big Spider-Man fan, it's fun to own some of their very first comics. So in the Veve app, and I'll discuss that a little bit later, they have the NFT for Amazing Spider-Man #1. It's fun to own that comic. In the physical world, that's a really expensive comic, so it's hard to get. To get it as an NFT and to have that piece of history, to see the art, to page through it, it's pretty cool. So that's kind of the reasons why. Now, the other reason why, which you probably may or may not know, is that because this is such a new space, the NFT space is new, a lot of times you can get these comics for relatively cheap, and they have been going up in price. This is obviously not financial advice or anything like that, but it's something to consider. I'd have to mention it or else I'd be lying to you. Okay, so where do you get these things? How does that work? Okay, right now there is an app that you can download on your phone, whether it be iPhone or Android. You download it like any other app. The app is called Veve, V-E-V-E. I'll put the icon up here. And you download it, load it. You have to create an account, like a lot of things. You put in, choose an email, etc., password. And then you're in. And you can start looking around. There's a store. You can look at other collectibles that have recently been dropped. That's the term for being released, is dropped. And then you have your own store of collectibles. And then you do use real money to buy these NFTs or collectibles. And so you load money into the app, and then you can purchase any of the comics. So let's get quick to some of the numbers, because you're going to be like, how much is this? On the app, you can find comics for as low as, $12, and you can find them really expensive ones that are, $30,000. So there's this huge gamut. Additionally, when they are released, generally on Tuesdays and Thursdays, they are $6.99, so $7 when you purchase those. So let's talk about the mechanics of how do you load money onto the app. So if you look in the lower right after you've loaded it and you've logged in, there's this account button, and when you click on that, there's this thing called wallet. And then when you click on that, you're able to load money in, and your dollars turn into gems. And it's a 1-to-1 ratio. So if you load $7, it'd be 7 gems. You're going to want to load a little bit more than that, because some of the comics, I think maybe the cheapest one might be $12. So just know that. But pick whatever you feel is comfortable. And you might want to look at the market, which is another button down there. And then there's a button in the upper area that's called comics. And then you can start looking through the comics, get a feel for the prices so you know how much you have to load onto the phone. So now that you've loaded some money onto the phone, let's specifically talk about the comics. So once you click on the market and you start looking through all these comics, you're going to be, potentially a little bit overwhelmed. Whoa, there's all kinds of crazy comics here. So what I have done is I have a spreadsheet that I have linked in the description below, and I link that spreadsheet in any one of my videos. Click on it and it will show you all of the various NFTs that have been dropped, all the comics, names, and it tells you the significance of that comic. Is this the first appearance of Black Widow, or maybe the first appearance of Hawkeye? whomever it might be. So you can say, oh, that's interesting. That'd be kind of fun to own the first appearance of Black Widow. So it has all that laid out in that spreadsheet. I also have it ranked by tier, S tier, A, B, C, D, and that tells you the significance in terms of both how the value, how much I think it might go up in the future, and perhaps what type of demand there is for that particular comic. But really, it's up to you. Collecting is really a personal thing. I mean, I know I own a lot of the comics in the D area, but I just love them for what they are, or the story, or the art, or whatever it might be. And a lot of times I'll buy a particular comic just because I really like the cover. That's very, very common. So let me talk now specifically about the comics. What happens is that Veve, when they drop or release a comic, they have a certain amount of comics that are minted. The equivalent in the physical world would be a print run. So, the print run of a comic might be 50,000, so there are 50,000 available. In the NFT world, the term is minted. They're minted on the blockchain. That's the significance of that. So sometimes they mint 60,000 of a comic. Sometimes they mint as low as 30,000 of a comic. And so, and they actually have minted as low as 10,000 of a comic. The scarcity of the comic does increase the value, but really what you're trying to find is this scarce and really high demand, and that's when you see the prices really, really go up. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But what you need to know is that any comic has a set amount that are minted, and there'll never be any more. And that ensures the scarcity, and that's why as more and more users come onto the platform, the demand grows, and that's kind of what's causing the price to go up. Let's specifically talk about a character that you may or may not know, which is Spider-Man. Spider-Man is a very popular one, and they, meaning Veve, released Amazing Spider-Man #1 very early, and it's obvious because he's such a huge character. And this, as I mentioned earlier, this particular comic in physical form is super, super expensive, potentially tens of thousands of dollars. So when you're looking at that specific comic, when you click in it, you'll notice that there are 5 different covers. And those covers represent different rarities of that comic. So like I mentioned, there are 60,000 Amazing Spider-Man comics, but they actually have divided that into different levels of rarity. So there are common versions of it, uncommon, rare, ultra rare, and secret rare. And there are less number minted for each of those. So for example, the secret rare, only 600 exist. In the common, there are 48,000. And then these other ones in between have various amounts in there. And they're, of course, obviously much more valuable because of the rarity. Initially, when I started, I just collected the common comics. They were relatively cheap. And on the Veve platform, if you go on to collect some of the other collectibles, the comics represent really some of the cheapest NFTs that you can buy on the platform. So it's a good place to start. And I really was interested in collecting some of the comics that I didn't own personally in a physical form because I couldn't, because I can't find them, or they're so rare, or they're super, super expensive, combination of all these things. And so Amazing Spider-Man #1 is one I've always wanted to own, so it was really fun for me to own the NFT. So after you've collected a couple comics, then you can kind of get a feel for it. Sometimes you're like, maybe I want to try and get all of the Amazing Spider-Man ones, or maybe I want to try to collect all the first appearances of the Avengers from the first Avengers movie. So you'll kind of get a feel for what your collection style is. And for me, at this point, I'm actually collecting all of them. So that's been fun for me, and I'll see how long I can do this. But really, if you're going after the commons, they're generally pretty reasonably priced. Some of them are getting up there, and Marvel Comics #1 actually is quite expensive right now, even in common form. I think it's around $90. But that you have to figure it out for yourself. Obviously, if you have more questions, you can ask me. I am going to do a follow-up video really based on some of the questions I see in this one, but feel free to reach out to me as I indicated earlier, both in the comments or on my IG or Twitter. It's SleeplynComics, like I mentioned. And I really appreciate you guys for watching. I'll talk to y'all soon.